this with the wave motif with the...
Yeah.
This is like the Dutch ripples. You see this on the inside and the outside?
I love this idea of just talking about the frames. We often encounter paintings today from 100, 200 years ago that have been long since separated from their original housing and their original frame. And over the years, I've become very familiar and close with this collection. And I've noticed that there are several works that just feel like their presentation is not quite complete. A few years ago, I invited two frame experts, Simeon Lagodich and Tracy Gill, to visit the High, assess the collection frames, and help me develop a plan for how best to address the needs of our historical paintings. The result has been over 30 historic frames added to the collection, in addition to several frames that we've been able to conserve. And all of this has been made possible by two very generous local donors. There are a lot of discoveries to be made in the High's collection, and if you pay close attention to our frames, I think you'll be well rewarded. These two frames, for example, have recently been conserved, and they're just really glorious now. I love with these early 19th century American frames, the ways in which the organic details just seem to grow out of the corners of the frame. Around the galleries also, you can see many examples where you have paintings that are made around the same time and for a similar purpose, such as these two works of young women about to be betrothed, but yet one is in a very elegant, high-style English frame, and this happens to be a work by the young John Singleton Copley, who was considered a really sought-after artist at the time. Versus here, a portrait of a young woman whose painting was made by an unknown, probably folk artist in a much simpler frame style. We're in one of my favorite spots in the High Museum collection, in front of a selection of portraits of Native American leaders, and they're all in their original early 19th century frames. They were painted faux bois frames made to look rusticated or like fake wood, but I think they're probably the most beautiful frames we have here in the collection. So one really successful restoration story is this work here by Martin Johnson Heydt, a painting that he made after his travels to Brazil in the 1870s. It's such an elaborate picture, and it had this gorgeous inlaid liner that was the entirety of its frame for all we knew, but it became clear that it was actually missing an outer element. And so we worked with the frame restorers to find just the perfect exterior part of this frame, and it really creates a whole package that is just exquisite. So many of our 19th century landscape paintings were in 20th century replica frames that just didn't make sense for the pictures. With these classic frames, simple coves articulated with designs draw the eye to the serenity of these compositions. And even more, they're now displayed as they would have been intended by the artist. We also have some great examples of these beautiful Barbizon frames from the Gilded Age, the peacocks of the collection, if you will. I particularly love this new frame here that we have around this genre painting by George Wright. And I love it in particular because it draws your attention not only to the painting, but also to the frames within the painting itself. I consider a painting and a frame the whole package. I mean, if the frame and the painting together unite and form a complete experience. We found several works in the collection that are now just, with a new frame, just completely transformed. It's sort of like putting on a new dress, you know. The new frames on the paintings might not be something that for the average visitor would jump off the walls and announce itself, but that's a good thing because really what you're experiencing then is something that harmonizes, a pairing that works well together.